Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I want to share a little something from the principles of Istiqamu, al-Istiqamu. Um, we've we've kind of been discussing Istiqama. Well, we was discussing it a couple of weeks ago, a couple of weekends over at the little center where we be having classes. But I've received. I was asked a couple of things as far as the Quran ayat about for the ones who say that Allah is my Lord alone, and then Istiqamu, which some translations will say being steadfast or firm. But so it's like the ones who be steadfast or firm, right? The ones who Istiqamu, that says my Lord, that Allah is my Lord alone, and then the one who says that, and then Istiqamu, up on them there should be no fear, nor should they grieve. That Quran ayat. And the angels upon the time of their death, it's in there more than once. So I'm just giving you the gist of it. And then they say on the time of death, the angels will come and say, have no fear, nor shall you grieve. Here's glad tidings of the paradise, and we was your friends and supporters on the earth. Well, on earth in this life, and we are going to be your friends and supporters in the next life. So that kind of show you some of the importance of Istiqama. And Istiqamu basically is putting Istiqama into action. And you can see how it's attached to Jannah. Now, not just saying Allah is my Lord alone, actually living that out. Because you could see, like, even according to the Quran, people could take their desires or just different things as their Lord. So it's something that you have to live out. Allah has to be your Lord alone. And when you understand Rububiyyah, Allah's lordship, the Lord of the world, the Lord of the Alameen, when you really get into what the lordship is, you'll be better at making sure that Allah is your Lord alone, because money can become your Lord. Whatever your main desires is can become your Lord. Some people want status. Status becomes their Lord. Recognition, status, recognition. They'll do anything to be recognized, But, so basically, a few people just really like, how do you put Istiqama, or how do you Istiqamu? You know what I'm saying? So, Istiqamu, in short, and I be trying to keep it general, because some of the people that listen to me, some of them new Muslims. So I try to keep terminology as basic as possible. And plus I ain't really complicated like that to really speak in complicated terms. But Istiqamu is basically putting the deen into practice. You see what I'm saying? Like acting up on Tawheed. Not just saying Tawheed is the oneness of Allah, which is what a lot of people in America say. But you gotta live that Allah is one. Allah comes before everything. It's something that you live. So some of the actions from Istiqamu will be dhikr of Allah in action, remembrance of Allah in action, not just going, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. That's dhikr of the tongue. And, because it's a beautiful book, man. I was reading, man, where a scholar, and, we talking about a scholar of the past, 1,000 years ago, 809 years ago. And he made a statement in it and saying that the remembrance of Allah has became nothing but beads. I was like, wow. The remembrance of Allah has became nothing but beads. And what he was referring to as people just, of course you have some people who feel like dhikr beads is some bid'ah, but when you start to learn about the salaf and different things, that's not the case, But anyway, I won't go into that. But he was saying the remembrance of Allah has become nothing but beads. So from the remembrance of Allah, as far as Istiqamu, right? The remembrance of Allah in action. So let's say you at a grocery store and you see a member of the opposite sex and they may approach you, they may be a little friendly, they trying to get your attention, they're making advancements towards you. And at that moment when you feeling like, I'm going to act up on these advancements, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm with it. So this male or female, I'm with it. But at that moment, you remember Allah at that moment. And then some of the etiquettes of at that moment, when you remember Allah, then you seek refuge from shaitan. A'udhu billah min ash-shaytanir rajim. Right? Allah musta'an, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. You remember Allah at that moment and do what Islam tell you to do in those situations. When you're able to do that, then Allah is your Lord and not your desires. So from Istiqamu is like the remembrance of Allah in actions. You know what I'm saying? We don't want our remembrance of Allah to be reduced to Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Although we should do those things. But some people will do those things because they know there's certain rewards attached to it. But then when it's a real life situation where they need to remember Allah and His deen, they go left and do what they shouldn't do. So just to give an example of Istiqamu, putting Istiqamu into action, being steadfast or firm upon your religion, and then doing particular deeds, like for instance giving gifts, how it bring Muslims together. It's a good form of dawah in action. It make the Muslims look good. It make the Muslims feel better. When you giving them a gift, it does something to the heart when it's people who are appreciative. So those type of things. So these type of things, and you steadfast, you firm on this. This stuff is from the deen. This stuff makes the deen. It strengthens brotherhood. It strengthens sisterhood. So these are some of the things that's from Istiqamu. And then if it's something that's particular that's in Hadiths, then you also doing something from the Sunnah. Like for instance, let's say Istiqamu and you marry, and you got to keep it fi sabilillah. Like, okay, you wake up, you and your spouse wake up in the morning, right? Maybe not necessarily for men, so I ain't saying women should do this, but they could. But sometimes when you wake up in the morning, and if your wife get up with you and y'all make Fajr, y'all pray Fajr, y'all done got up, y'all done got y'allself together, and then as soon as y'all get done praying Fajr, just give your wife a real big hug. Kiss her forehead, kiss her cheek, possibly kiss her lips. I'm just saying that because, sometimes in the morning, people just waking up and they just voodoo their mouth. They don't necessarily brush their teeth in the morning. So that's why I'm saying perhaps kiss her mouth. Kiss her forehead. Just give her a real big hug, a sincere, firm hug. Kiss her forehead, kiss her cheek. These and that feeling that they'll get from that. They may try to act like they didn't get nothing from it, and some of them might not. But what should come from that when y'all deem is a certain thing? See, Allah put what's in the heart of two people. Allah put what can be in the heart between two people. These type of actions, because they from Istiqamu, can strengthen what's in the heart between two people. And like for the sisters, your husband might not necessarily want a hug and a kiss, and I'm not saying things like, I'm trying to name things where people don't feel like this is an obligation for me. Like, let's say your wife feel like cooking breakfast is just part of your rights, and then like the husband paying her phone bill is just part of her rights. Although you do those things, you pay her phone bill, but technically it's not a form of Istiqamu. It's more like, it can be, but if you just doing it like, oh, I'm just paying this phone bill because I got to, or like her, I'm just cooking breakfast because I got to. You know what I'm saying? More or less. But like with that woman who, especially if your husband go to the masjid and for Fajr, and when he come home, it's a nice breakfast cooked, and he may not be used to it, or you doing it to strengthen your marriage, to put that something in the heart between y'all, something that that women feel like men would enjoy. The kiss and the hug thing is more or less for the women, and a little breakfast, or a back rub when he get off work. If he work hard or something, these type of things can be from Istiqamu, because they bring love into the relationship between two people. See, a lot of people not realizing is, man, the opposite of that is when both people is, you need to do what I need you to do for me. I'm not getting nothing out of this, so you're not going to get nothing out of this. You know what I'm saying? You got to argue with me to get me to cook your breakfast because I don't want you to feel like you run me. You got to bow down to me for me to pay your phone bill. These things. These is the opposite of Istiqamu, because it brings strife and turmoil and enmity into the marriage. Things like Istiqamu bring peace, Islam, in the marriage, in the brotherhood, in the sisterhood, in the ummah. These type of things is Istiqamu. I'm going to give y'all a quick jewel from this book, and then I'm going to give y'all a hadith. So, from Istiqamu, right? Hold on, let me do one thing. And this is something that cause like I say, I'm paying attention to myself. I'm really studying my nafs this Ramadan. So I pick something that I'm going to work on. I look at something every day, and then these are things I'm going to continue to work on after Ramadan, bismillah ta'ala. So because this was something that was brought to my attention. Someone felt like the term humility, when they seen humility in the Quran, or humility and hadiths, or people talking about humility, they think that's a form of humiliating yourself, being weak. Due to one thing I noticed about us Americans, especially when I say us Americans, us Americans of this tone, sometimes we hear words and we grow up with words, but we kind of give them our own definition. And sometimes the definition do fit, but it's rarely the definition if you go look it up in a dictionary. You see what I'm saying? So they were saying, they was kind of taking that humility mean like humiliating yourself. You had to do something to where like if they something say, have some humility around your wife. Oh no, I ain't with that, man. That's basically telling me to humiliate myself. Just to put it in a perspective of what I'm trying to get people to understand. So what I want to do is first look up the word humble. So y'all can see y'all don't have to do all that, but I got the word humble looked up in the dictionary. When you look up the word humble, it says having or showing a modest or low estimate of one's own importance. Having or showing a modest or low estimate of one's own importance. That's the word humble. Now when you look up the word humility, let me read humble one more time. Having or showing a modest or low estimate of one's own importance. Right? That's humble. Humility is a modest or low view of one's own importance. Humbleness. So basically, humility is basically being humble. So let's bring this to a marriage. You have now these male and female, we're gonna say spouses. Everybody's the prize. My husband need to bow down to me. Don't he realize how important I am? She need to bow down to me. Don't she know how important I am? Humility and being humble is bringing that down just a little bit. Bringing it down to just a modest view of yourself. You understand? Or a low estimate of how important that you are. Because if you walk around with the mindset of they need me, yada, 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 you're taking away from the I also need them. Now you could say, oh, well, I really don't need them. Well, why are you pouting about something that you want from them? Generally, people pouting and having a fit because they're not getting something that they want from the person that they claim that they don't even need. So when you humble and you having some humility in these situations, you won't have that point of view of I'm the it. This marriage revolves around me, my rights, my rights, my rights. This both parties, male and female. You understand? Thinking too highly of their self that they belittle the importance of the other person. And when you dealing with Muslims, when you dealing with another Muslim, you can't have that mental state. So this is in friendships, this is everything. You got to have, so that's part of the humility and being humble. So these things, to be humble, to have humility, not humiliating yourself. Some people do feel like, because it was a time that people who really was around me, they used to say that I was humble. Like, man, you're a humble dude, man. But then some people would look at it and be like, man, I can't act like him, man, because people would think I'm soft. You know what I'm saying? Oh, man, the dean ain't got a call for that, man. That's being soft. Because there's, Islamically, you have some iman issues. Really, you must have some insecurities. You know what I'm saying? What determines if a person is soft or not is when that battle come and they test it. It ain't got nothing to do with you sitting back being mild-mannered, acting like you got some sense. You see what I'm saying? Because sometimes, usually, the loudest person in the room got an exit plan. I'm just going to word it that way. Generally, the loudest person in the room, they got an exit plan. Okay? But not to get into that. So, being humble, having humility, these things are from Istiqamu. Well, Istiqama. But you got to put these things in actions. Not acting humble, not fake humble. So let me give y'all the hadith, right? Real quick. And then we could do the Istiqama. From the principle of Istiqama, right? And this hadith, man, is I love it, man. I love it. So, subhanallah thing. Here it is, right here. So this was narrated by Sa'd bin Mu'adh bin Anas al-Juhani, narrated from his father that the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, said, whoever leaves valuable, extravagant, expensive dress, clothing, accessories, materials, glasses, earrings, watches, rings, shoes, whatever it is that's adorn yourself in clothing, right? Out of humility to Allah, while they are able to afford it. This don't even mean rich. While they are able to afford it, Allah will call him before the heads of creation on a day of judgment, so that they can choose whatever hulal of faith he wishes to wear. So it says that hulal of faith is the garments of paradise. So it don't say if you're rich. It just say if you can afford it. So, like us, we have these expensive jeans, expensive shirts, whatever clothing, shoes, but you can afford to get it. If you leave that off and dress in modesty for the sake of Allah, right? Which I'm going to bring another point, Bismillah Ta'ala, I don't forget it. For the sake of Allah, Allah's going to bring you on the day of judgment. You're going to get called out in front of everybody and say, here, choose what you want from the garments of paradise. These things is kind of showing you first you just got to see how it's attached to Jannah. You getting called up to say, here, pick what you want from the garments of paradise. You might put yourself in a position with the stuff that you have on, that when you on that day of judgment, instead of saying, come out here and pick whatever garment of paradise you want, you might not get looked at or spoke to. So when you see a hadith or something, that has something attached to some goodness and Jannah, you need the Istiqamu. You need to put that into practice. You need to take that off that page and put it in your life. You understand? This is something that's from Istiqama. Now, look at some of the taqreeds on it. Allah loves the acts of the Muslim who, through well-to-do and rich, avoids wearing orientation garments out of modesty. However, not to wear fine garments because of the fear that those who thinking him to be rich, i.e., you really ain't got no bread. You just wasting your money on clothes and things that make it look like you got bread. Some of the men, so that they can attract women, or so that they can look like some type of wealthy type person in a community, right? Some of the women going to the store and getting clothes with tags and still on them, knowing they got to take it back because they just want to go out and attract some men, or they want to go out with their girls and look like they got it, right? Which is bringing me to the point that I wanted to bring, right? And then it says, would beg for, so, or people think you got money, they ask you for money, right? And beg money from him, or wearing shabby clothes in order to impress the people with one's piety, where you just saying, let me put this stuff on real quick so they think I'm righteous. And sometimes this is where your thobes and your kimars and your overgarments and your kafias and kufis and all this stuff start to come into play, where you just trying to impress the people and you trying to make them think you righteous. So basically the point of these is you're not doing that out of humility for Allah. It's really something self-driven. It's something that's attached to people, right? At this point, you could be falling into riyah. You making something else your Rabb, right? And then it says, and an abstinence in plain hypocrisy, unbecoming of a true believer. Now, when you see in English and they put true believer, that's referring to a mu'min, the one that has that iman, the one that has that deen on the inside, not a believer that just believe that Islam is the truth. There's a difference. You understand? So, but this attached to everything. So, like I say, the ones who avoid this stuff that can afford it. Now let's flip it. Just think of all the people that got a closet full of clothes that they got with credit cards. Clothes, shoes, boots, bags, purses, jewelries, belts, hats, you know, Jordans, up on Jordans, up on Jordans, with stuff that they done bought with credit cards. Why they using the credit cards? Because they got all this stuff because they couldn't afford it. I.e., that next category. You trying to look like you got bread when you don't have it. Same thing with these vehicles. People in all type of debt and trying to look like they got something, so they trying to get expensive looking cars and all this stuff and paying all this riba and all this extraordinary amount of interest and stuff on them and late fees, all because they trying to look like they got bread, instead of having some humility for Allah and leaving that stuff off. People with houses, right? And then they got all this stuff from Rent-A-Center and rent-to-own furniture places, right? because they want to impress company, trying to look rich, trying to look like you have money that you don't have. These things go against that. When it's going against that, what is it going against? Istiqamu, because these things put you in an unfavorable place with Allah Azza wa Jal. Now, not saying not saying a person can't have nice things, but if the law of the land is to leave off that stuff when you can afford it, how do you go to it when you can't afford it with credit cards? With all type of rent-to-own furnitures, crazy amount of interest on all type of different vehicles, with all type of astronomical insurances and stuff that you gotta pay because you basically renting to own this vehicle. So now you got to have an excessive amount of insurance because it's not yours. This is the opposite of that. Now keep in mind, do what you want to do, but leaving those things off when you can afford them leads to blessings on a day of judgment. Now imagine what going to those things when you can't afford them does with credit cards. Now, like I say, I'm not trying to knock nobody that got credit cards or, people who with card payments, and this and thing, or rent to own furniture. Sometimes individuals need to do those things. But the point is, when you take advantage of those things trying to look like you're something that you're not, it's going against Istiqamu, because there's too much riba and too much things, because you're trying to impress people and not Allah Azza wa Jal. You see what I'm saying? It don't matter if you got 60 kimars and overgarments and niqabs, and 50 of them out of the 60 is all black, but you don't go nowhere, and you may or may have not used credit cards. You know what I'm saying? So that's all I'm saying. So Istiqamu is really this is something that attached to some rewards. This is ajr. This is some type of ajr, a reward from Allah on a day of Yom Qiyamah. You should take that off of this page and Istiqamu. Be firm with this. Be steadfast upon it. Do your very best to maintain that. So now, with me giving y'all that, now I can give y'all the principle out of the book of excellent book, Principles of Istiqamu, right? 10 principles. Not saying that it's limited to, but look at this one right here. One of the 4 principles of Istiqamu, which I'm tying to this hadith, right? That is sought from the saints. One of the 4 principles that Istiqamu is sought from the servant of Allah is as-sadad, right? As-sadad. And if they are not able to as-sadad, then they should al-makariba. I hear people pronounce it different, so I want to pronounce it both ways I hear it so that people understand what I'm saying. Makariba or makariba, right? This is how I'm saying it the way I hear people say it so that they can understand what I'm talking about, right? So the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam grouped these 2 affairs together: as-sadad and al-makariba, right? Together, and it's saying he grouped these two affairs together, and then he says, verily the religion is ease. There's ease in the religion, not that it's easy. There's ease in the religion, right? No one will ever make the religion difficult except it will overcome them. So if you make it difficult, it will overcome you. So now this is the nasiya, the advice at it, right? So sadidu or karibu, and receive the glad tidings. So he giving you the jewels. He giving you the principle of istiqamu. What you need to do to be blessed with the ease that's in the religion, and not to make the religion difficult to the point where it overcomes you. Here's the key. Sadidu and karibu. And if you do those things, you will receive the glad tidings. Right? So let's break it down. Therefore, that which is sought for in regards to our istiqamah is as-sadad. As-sadad is to perform the sunnah completely. So, to be blessed with the ease that's in the religion, right? And to not make your religion difficult to the point where you're overcome by it. The advice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is to perform the sunnah completely. Now let's just take that one little point and apply it to that hadith. But we taking it to all levels of extravagance, even trying to, overeat for videos, buying all type of lobsters and shrimp boils and crabs and all this stuff. But you really ain't got it like that. You know what I'm saying? You're using your food stamp card. But enjoy your life. But when you take that action and perform the sunnah completely, when you can afford it, you leave it off for humility. Not saying don't indulge every once in a while. It ain't saying you ain't never supposed to be what we call fresh. But think about when you're doing it, what you're doing it for. You're supposed to be fresh for Jum'ah. But you got to understand, for Jum'ah, this right here, a new one of these and a kufi is fresh for Jum'ah. Not a swap meet, a Jewtown Gucci shirt. You know what I'm saying? Not a swap meet Jewtown Balenciaga jogging suit. Okay? These for the Eid. You know what I'm saying? One of these and a nice little regular watch, a ring or two, you know what I'm saying? Fresh little pair of shoes. But that's fresh, not some bootleg Balenciaga shoes that you bought with credit cards. That's the opposite. So perform this sunnah completely. When you can afford it, leave it off. Not when you can't afford it, use credit to overindulge in these things. To where the interest that you pay on it alone, you could live off of. When you could have lived off the interest that you pay on this stuff yearly. You know what I'm saying? So this is how you, as sadidu, just perform the sunnah completely, right? So the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to Ali, Allah be pleased with him, may Allah be pleased with him, when he asked him to teach him a supplication. This is what he told Ali when Ali asked him for a supplication. He said, say, oh Allah, guide me and sadini, right? Which means make me from those that perform the sunnah completely. Make me a one of those that's able to as-sadidu. You know what I'm saying? Make me one of those people. And he said, and mention guidance when you are lost. When you lost, also ask for guidance. And as-sadad when you want your arrow to be on target. So, like they say, just to give a jewel to this, like I like to deduce and abstract and take my mind through a whole nother sunnah or ayat when I see a commandment. So where it says, and mention guidance when you are lost, and as-sadad when you want your arrow to be on target. What is it that it says the arrow is on target, that hits like a bullseye, like it's going to hit that bullseye every time? Tahajjud prayer. Praying tahajjud. Praying tahajjud is like an arrow that doesn't miss. So when it's as-sadad, when you want your arrow to be on target, follow something from the sunnah completely that has an arrow hits its target. This is advice from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now what's the qaribu? Now look, the servant is required to struggle with himself to attain as-sadad, to follow the guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his ways, in his mannerism, and a person must strive up on that. That's the striving, the being steadfast. That's the Istiqamu part. And if he is unable, then he must try to come close, and that's qaribu, right? Trying to get as near to it as they can, as close to him as they can. Allah the Most High says, therefore take the straight path, right? Take the straight path to Allah and seek forgiveness from Allah. The mentioning of forgiveness after the order of Istiqamu shows that the servant will inevitably fall short, whenever he strives for al-Istiqamah. This is the reason why Al-Hafid Ibn Rajab said in his The All-Powerful, the Most Vulnerable, says, therefore take the straight path to him with true faith, Islamic monotheism, and obedience to him, and seek forgiveness of him. Now, when it's saying fall short, because if you can't follow it completely, right, get as close as you can. Let me give you an example of what some of those say is. When you can't pray standing up, pray sitting down. You're getting as close as you can. If you can't pray sitting down, pray laying down. If you can't make wudu with water, tayammum. Although these things are from the sunnah as well, but your original obligation, if you can't do it, do get as close to that as you possibly can. That's just one example. So, with this hadith that I'm giving you, and you apply it to everything other than just clothes, right? Anything that could lead to being overly extravagant, when you can afford it. When you leave those things off in humility, and basically I'm giving y'all the keys to being a zahid. This is also practicing what they refer to as zud. Some people translate Zud to asceticism. Matter of fact, I love to look up words that when they translate it in English, they see what they want you to get from it. So let's pull up the word asceticism. And it says asceticism is severe self-discipline and avoidance of all forms of overindulgence, or all forms of indulgence, typically for religious reasons. So that's a good I never looked up the word asceticism before. I just knew what Zud mean. So I just took it as, okay, asceticism is affiliated with Zud. That's a beautiful definition. So these is keys to being a Zahi, one who practices Zud. And when you understand what comes along with being a Zahi, not only is there Ajr and Barakat, you saving yourself from the fire. Because like what I'm giving y'all from this hadith, one leads to Ajr. And if you're not careful, the other one leads to the fire. Or different type. Instead of Ajr, instead of rewards, there's punishment. You could actually get to the point, and like I say, when you start deducing, some of these things cause you to forget about Allah. How are you forgetting about Allah, but you still feel like I'm praying, so I'm remembering Allah? Because Allah warns us about avoiding these things, even showing a reward from doing it. But we forget that Allah told us how to act and had the best example in his prophet. We love to say, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to perfect moral character. But you act like a donkey. Rasulullah was the best example for us to follow. Okay, well then be a Zahi then. And if you can't be a Zahi, Qaribu, get as close as you can. If Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the best example for us to follow and came to correct moral character, would Rasulullah be out here overindulging with credit cards? Will Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam be out here trying to ride around with a Range Rover to look rich, paying an extra amount of a crazy amount of interest and late fees on it? Can't even keep the insurance on it, so they got to hide it for repo, no insurance, 10 payments behind. Would the Rasulullah do that? Sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Laugh. Wouldn't even consider it. Wouldn't even consider it. So these things, this is how you put these is things that's from Istiqamu. When you see something, when you read the Quran ayat, that's a commandment. Just know that there's a hadith attached to it that show how that should be played out. Go and look towards those hadiths, see how they supposed to be played out, pull them up off of that page. Istiqamu, where some refer to it as being upright upon the religion, being steadfast, firm. Pull it up off that page. Istiqamu, as-sadad, or sadadu, or qaribu. Pull it off that page. Follow the sunnah completely, or get as close as you possibly can. These is the keys, B. These is the keys. Other than so, and I'm not going to call anybody anything, but when you listen to some of the people that discuss these type of issues, they'll say, for the one who has ill manners, ill intentions, that runs around like a jackbutt, but on their tongue when they're around people, you know, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to perfect moral character. There's some hypocrisy in your statement. Like they say, there's hypocrisy in statement, there's hypocrisy in actions, there's even hypocrisy in belief. If you really believe that, get to those hadiths and start to implement it. Or are you just trying to sound like you know some stuff around people? There's hypocrisy in this. Oh, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the best example for us to follow. Okay, well then follow him then. Or shut up. Follow him then, or shut up. Because there's hypocrisy in these things when you're running around with this speech on your tongue to be impressive. Have some humility in Allah. The same thing like with these clothes. Just implement that exact same hadith, but use it with your speech. Just because you can say those words, if you can't implement them, then have some humility with Allah and shut up. You know what I'm saying? Because there can be some hypocrisy there. Because you the total opposite of what you're talking about. Especially when you only saying these things because you're trying to sound impressive. Istiqamu, Sadidu, or Karibu, or just shut up. You know what I'm saying? Respectfully. And I'm going to close on this, man, because it was a funny story, man, where it was this brother, man, who was running around. And what I'm saying, this isn't coming from me. This is basically from some things that I heard from another person talking about what a scholar had said. It was a brother who was running around talking like this and saying all this and talking about Sahih Bukhari. And, you know, and the scholar had seen him. And then some time passed and the scholar seen him again. And seen his character and the way that he act. And the scholar looked at him and said, there's no way you reading Sahih Bukhari. There's no way. There's no way you reading Sahih Bukhari. Now this is a scholar. Just looking at him, seeing the way he act, you might have Sahih Bukhari, but there's absolutely no way there's no way you reading Sahih Bukhari. And some of these things, you know, some of this speech, some of this stuff that you trying to put off onto the people, like they say in the city, man, you merchant. you basically trying to get the people to buy into your nonsense. you merchant on Sahih Bukhari. You using this to get people to buy into your foolishness. There's no way. The scholar told him, man, you ain't even reading it, man. You need to be careful, man. That's something else some people need to look into, man. Hypocrisy. Hypocrisy in speech. Hypocrisy in belief. Hypocrisy in actions. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't make a liar of yourself. But inshallah, man, this will be some benefit to the people, man, and you know, the importance of just learning what Istiqamu is. You know, I mean, when you go to the Quran and just look at the different ayats about Istiqamu and Istiqamu, putting it into action, and just seeing what it's attached to. It's attached to Jannah. It's so much Ajr. It's attached to Jannah, the angels being your friends and support in this life and the next. The angels telling you, have no fear or don't grieve, and give you the glad tidings of paradise. Come on, man. When you see something that's attached to some rewards in this life and Jannah, in the Quran Hadiths, pull it up off the page and put it into practice. Don't just walk around talking about, Allah Azza wa Jal talk about we need the Istiqamu. Quran al-Kareem say Istiqamu for the true believers up on the path that Allah set straight. You know that them cats, man, who be talking like that old red fish, blue fish, one fish, two fish. Man, get out of here with that, man. Y'all know what that is. Them brothers who be sitting up with that old red fish, blue fish, one fish, two fish speech. Man, get out of here, man. Get out of here with that. But Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Any mistakes I made came from myself and the shaitan. Anything that I said was correct came from Allah Azza wa Jal al-Muqtadir. I mean, Istiqamu, Sadidu, Al-Qaribu. Bi'ithni Allah Ta'ala.